Shalom and welcome to Scripture Nuggets with Restorers of Truth Ministry. Today's Scripture Nugget, we're going to look at the conversation of Nicodemus, and that's in Yochanan chapter 3, verses 1 through 21. It's commonly called in the book of John, but Yochanan chapter 3, verses 1 through 21. Now, in today's Scripture Nugget, we'll be using the King James Version. However, we will overlay some of the words within King James, within this version, within the text, to kind of bring out or to pinpoint exactly the proper term, just to bring in some clarity to this conversation. So let's begin in Yochanan chapter 3. Let's start at verse 1. It said, there was a man of the Pharisees named Nicodemus, a ruler of the Yahudim. Now, in the normal English version, it would says of the Jews, but the appropriate term would be Yahudim. Verse 2 says, the same came to Yeshua, or Yahushua, some say Yahusha, by night, and said unto him, Rabbi, we know that thou art a teacher come from Elohim. For no man can do these miracles that thou doest, except Elohim be with him. And then Yahusha answered and said unto him, Verily, verily, I say unto thee, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of Elohim. Nicodemus said unto him, How can a man be born when he is old? Can he enter the second time into his mother's womb and be born? Yahusha said this, Verily, verily, I say unto you, except a man be born of water and of the Ruach. Now, of is italic, so it was inserted by the translators. So it would read, except a man be born of water and the Ruach, he cannot enter into the kingdom of Elohim. Now, what exactly is Yahusha is saying here? What exactly is MaShiach saying here? How is this conversation coming about? Remember, Nicodemus, he is a ruler of the Yahudim, and he comes to MaShiach. Now, back in the day, we used to talk about how he came to him by night, but that's not the focus here. The focus here, as we go into this next slide, the focus here is Nicodemus and MaShiach is engaging in what is called a rabbinic answering, questioning process, if you will, if we could say that, which is a process in which you don't ask a question, you formulate a statement, and then that is the question itself, and the responder is actually given an answer even though you didn't really formulate a question. The respondent is actually, in this case, Yahusha, he's given a response. But let's break it down by verses 1 through 5, and see what is actually occurring here. Number one, in verse 1, rather, it says that Nicodemus was a ruler of the Yahudim. Now, what that means is that Nicodemus was a wealthy leader. He was wealthy. He was not only wealthy, but it's possible that he was a member of the Sanhedrin. And normally, if you're a member of the Sanhedrin, you had wealth of some form or some fashion. So it is almost safe to say that he was a member of the Sanhedrin. He was a ruler. Now, one historical background said that Nicodemus was perhaps the third wealthiest in all of the land of Judea. But nonetheless, he was a wealthy leader. Now, in verse 2, he begins a statement. He didn't ask a question. He makes a statement. Again, this is a rabbinic answering and question process that rabbis do. He says, we know that you are a teacher come from Elohim. For no man can do these miracles that you do except Elohim be with him. Now, what is Nicodemus' focus here? He's engaging another rabbi, MaShiach. He's engaging him into the answering question approach. That's what he's actually doing. He's not necessarily asking a question like in the Western world, we ask a question and it's normally a yes or no response or an answer. In rabbinic thought, in Hebraic thought, no, what this does is it engages you into the conversation and you begin to respond in such a way to where it's not a yes or no, it is evident gathering or evidence submission. Okay, so that's the answering question and approach. That's what's really happening here. And so even though his approach is focused on answering in question, but he's also looking at something outwardly. He's trying to get MaShiach to respond and give me evidence on why you're doing this and what you are doing. Now, he says now, no man can do these miracles in verse 2. What does that mean? He has witnessed Yahushua turn water into wine. He witnessed MaShiach cleansing the temple. He witnessed MaShiach calling his Talmudim and the Talmudim responding to him without questioning. So he witnessed all of this, and this is causing him to come and approach MaShiach in such a way. We know that no man can do these miracles except Elohim be with him. He not only said that, but he said, we know that you are a teacher come from Elohim. So that's another evidence that he knows how MaShiach teaches. He knows that. He knows that. And he says that can only happen except Elohim be with him. But again, this is the rabbinic answering and questioning approach. And he's saying, give me evidence. Show me why and how is it true that you are sent from Elohim. But notice the response of MaShiach. He says, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of Elohim. Now, his response, again, MaShiach knows how to do answering questions. He knows that he's sent from Elohim. And so as he's using this, his focus is not on the miracles, but his response is about being born again and seeing the kingdom. There's two things. They work hand in hand. So that's in the first few verses, that is exactly what is happening here. He's actually engaging in the rabbinic answering and questioning. Now, in verse 4, Nicodemus' approach or response, again, in this dialogue, in this answering and questioning response or this approach, he asked the question, how can a man be born when he is old? Can he enter the second time into his mother's womb and be born? Verse 5, MaShiach responded and said, I said unto you, except a man be born of water and of the Ruach, he cannot enter into the kingdom of Elohim. Now, if you look at this, the more appropriate word would be, instead of using the word except a man be born of water, it would be unless a man is born of water and the Ruach, he cannot enter into the kingdom of Elohim. Yahushua's response, Mashiach's response, is always Torah-based. His focus is always Torah. Now let's continue and let's read verses 6 through 15 in its entirety. That which is born of the flesh is flesh, and that which is born of the Ruach is Ruach. Again, we're overlaying certain things with within the King James. We overlaying them with Hebraic words, or words that is more of the Hebrew background to give more clarity. Marvel not in verse 7 that I said unto you, you must be born again. And now he's getting into an evidence. The wind bloweth where it listeth, and thou hearest the sound thereof, but canst not tell whence it comes and whither it goes. So is everyone that is born of the Ruach. What is he saying here? When someone is born of the Ruach, when someone is born again, their actions begin to take place. There's an evidence that begin to take place that gives evidence that you are born again, that you're led by the Ruach, that you're born of the Ruach. Nicodemus in verse 9 answered and said unto him, how can these things be? MaShiach answered in verse 10 and said, art you a master of Yasharal, and knowest not these things? Now that's a wonderful response by Mashiach. You are a master. Remember in verse 1, it talks about Nicodemus being a ruler of the Yahudim. He was well off, he was educated, possibly a member of the Sanhedrin, so he knows the Torah. But Yahushua, Mashiach, his response was, hold up, you are a master of Yasharal, and knowest not, or rather, don't you know these things? Don't you know how the born again experience operate? Now, here's the thing about that. In Christianity and in Western thought, there's a consensus belief that says that this is the beginning of the born again experience, that it was introduced at this time. And that's not accurate. That's not correct. And as we look further into this, we're going to see, where is this born again experience? Where is it? Where did Mashiach bring this from? So let's continue. As a matter of fact, let's go to this next slide, which brings out a little something here. Now, as he's continuing doing this, answering question, this rabbinical response, again, many believe Mashiach is introducing something new, but he's not. He only speaks to things that's in the Torah. He doesn't introduce a new teaching per se. So the question is, where in the Torah is the born again and the seeing the kingdom mentioned? Where's that at? Because you have to have a source. If you're going to say something, you got to have a source. And so let's look at a couple of sources where born again and seeing the kingdom is in the Torah. Our first evidence is in Devarim, or Deuteronomy, chapter 10, verses 12 through 16. Now, I've highlighted certain words because these words brings out the born again expression. In chapter 10, verse 12, it says, now Yasharal, what doth Yahuwah your Elohim require of you, but to fear Yahuwah your Elohim, to walk in all his ways, and to love him, and to serve Yahuwah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your soul. Now notice I've highlighted fear, I highlighted walk in all his ways, I've highlighted love, and I highlighted serve with all your heart, with all your soul. This is born again language. And that's why Mashiach could ask Nicodemus, aren't you a master of Yasharal and you don't know this? You should know this. This is in Torah. See, the thing is that there's things within the Torah. There's foundations, there's judgments, there's statutes, there are commands within the Torah, even within the prophets, that when it's translated over in what they call the New Testament, which is really called the Renewed Covenant. But however, when it's translated over there into Greek, it seems as if everything is brand new. And actually, it's not. It is referenced within the Torah, is referenced within the Tanakh. The Torah, the writings, the prophets, all of that is there already. It's just that when there is a translation from one language to another language, and then there's transliterations and so forth, you miss those clues, you miss those words. So to fear Yahuwah, to walk in his ways, to love him, and to serve Yahuwah with all your heart, with all your soul, that's born again language. Verse 13, Devarim 10, to keep the commandments, to do what? To keep it, and his statutes, which I command you this day for your tov. Behold, the Shamahim, and the Shamahim of Shamahims is Yahuwah your Elohim. The earth with all that therein, only Yahuwah had delight in your fathers to love them, and he chose their seed after them, even you above all people as it is this yom. And here's another in verse 16, another born again expression. Circumcise the foreskin of what? Your heart, and do what? Be no more stiff-necked. That's born again language. That means there's a change. Circumcise the foreskin of your heart. There's a change. No more stiff-necked. Do not rebel. Now let's look at another evidence also in Devarim. This time in chapter 30, verse 6 through 10. And Yahuwah your Elohim will circumcise, that's that word again, your heart, and the heart of your seed, to love Yahuwah, again love, with all your heart, with all your soul, that you may live. And Yahuwah your Elohim will put all these curses upon your enemies and on them that hate you, which persecuted you. And thou shalt return, that word again, return, teshivah, and obey the voice of Yahuwah. That's born again language. That's born again language. And then do all his commandments, to return, to obey, and to do his commands. Verse 9, and Yahuwah your Elohim will make you plenteous in every work of your hand, in the fruit of your body, and in the fruit of your cattle, in the fruit of your land. For Yahuwah will begin to be glad over you, for tov, as he was glad over your fathers. Verse 10, if you will hearken unto the voice of Yahuwah, your Elohim, to keep his commands, to hearken unto what? Unto his voice, to keep his commands and his statutes, which are written. Where are they written at? They are written in the book of the law, the book of the Torah. And what is considered the words of the Torah? Devarim, Debar, words, Deuteronomy. And turn unto Yahuwah, your Elohim, with all your heart. That's born again language. And with all your soul. Let's look at a third witness as we continue in Devarim chapter 30. Look what it says. For the commandment which I command you this yom is not hidden from you, neither is it far off. It is not in Shamaim that thou shouldst say, who shall go up for us to Shamaim and bring it unto us, that we may hear it and do it. Neither is it beyond the sea that thou shouldst say, who shall go over the sea for us and bring it unto us, that we may hear it and do it. But look what he says in verse 14. Now this is something that is repeated in one of Shaul's writings. But where did Shaul get this from? He got it from Devarim. He says, but the word is very nigh you, in your mouth and in your heart, that you may do it. That's born again language. The confession of your mouth is because it's in your heart. And because what's in your heart is there, then you can do it. That's born again language. Look at verse 16. It says, in that I command you this day to love Yahuwah, your Elohim, to walk in his ways, to keep his commands. Not only his commands, but it says his statutes and his judgments. Evidence of a born-again experience is evidence that you are walking in his commands, that you obey in his statutes, and you obey in his judgments. You see, we focus so much on the 10 commands that we forget about the statutes and judgment, because the statute and judgment tells us how to deal with everyday issues, especially among those who is of the household or the congregation of MaShiach. Now let's look at another witness, this time in the Nabim or the prophets. Let's, in this case, look at Jeremiah or Jeremiah. And let's look at this born-again language. A familiar reading, it says in verse 31, chapter 31, behold, the days come, said Yahuwah, that I will make a new covenant. The appropriate word would be a renewed covenant. Why? Because it is being renewed with who? The same people who had the original covenant, which is the house of Yasharal and the house of Yehuda. Now he says in verse 32, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Mizraim, which my covenant they break, although I was an husband unto them. In other words, he said, I was true to my covenant, but they broke it. My covenant still stands. They broke the covenant. Not me, not Yahuwah. They broke the covenant. Verse 33, but this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Yasharal after those days, says Yahuwah. I would, here's that born again language again. I will put my law in their inward parts. I will write it in their hearts. What is he saying here? It would be in your soul. It would be upon your heart. It would be in your heart to do the things of Yahuwah. What did we see earlier in Devarim? It talks about his commandments, his statutes, and his judgments. The born-again experience. Now let's continue. Another witness. Ezekiel, or Ezekiel is commonly called. For I will take from you, verse 30, or chapter 36, verse 24, from among the heathen, and gather you out of all countries, and will bring you into your own land. Now look at this language that I have highlighted here. Then will I sprinkle clean water upon you. That's born again experience. And you shall be clean from all your filthiness, from all your idols. Then what does it mean from all your filthiness? From the fact that you are walking against Torah. Now hear this. What is transgression? What is sin? Sin is what? The transgression of the law, according to Yochanan. But now he says from all your idols. What are some of the things that you've done? You went and worshiped other mighty ones. Remember, that's in the command. You shall have no other mighty one before me. He said, I will cleanse you. That's another born again language or expression. Verse 36, or chapter 26, rather chapter 36, excuse me, and verse 26, a new heart, born again language, will I give you, and a new spirit or new ruach, born again language, will I put within you, and take away the stony heart out of your flesh, the rebellious rebellious heart. And what will he give us? A heart of obedience, a heart of flesh, a heart to love Yahuwah. And I would put, verse 27, my Ruach within you. And what happens when the Ruach is in you? It'll cause you to walk in his statutes. It'll cause you to walk and keep his judgments. And look what he says, and do them. Let's look at another Navim. Let's look at another so-called prophet, or not so-called, but another prophet for a witness. Yeshayahu, commonly called Isaiah. When this born-again experience take place. Yet now hear, O Yaakov, my servant, and Yasharal, whom I've chosen. Thus says Yahuwah, that made thee and formed thee from the womb, which will help thee. Fear not, O Yaakov, my servant, and thou Yasharan, whom I have chosen. For I will pour water upon him that is thirsty. That's born-again language. Upon the dry ground, and I will pour my Ruach upon your seed, and my Barakat upon your offspring. And they shall spring up as among the grass, as willows by the watercourses. Now look at verse 5. One shall say, now this is the born-again experience. One shall say, I am Yahuwah's. And another shall call himself by the name of Yaakov. And another shall subscribe with his hand unto Yahuwah, and surname himself by the name of Yasharal. What is happening here? We're having a born-again experience. And once that born-again experience takes place, I'm talking about the true born-again experience, you will begin to call upon the true name, Yahuwah. Look what he says in verse 5. I am Yahuwah's. I belong to Yahuwah's, to Yahuwah. And then look at it. It says, and another shall call himself by the name of Yaakov. And another will subscribe with his hand unto Yahuwah. And another will surname himself by the name Yasharal. What is happening here? There is an identification. Hear this, hear this. You are being identified with the same body. Not a separate body, the same body, because I have had that born again experience. I'm calling on the same mighty one. I'm using the same name. I'm calling myself after the body that's already in existence. I'm calling myself by the name of Yaakov. I'm subscribing unto the hand of my hand unto Yahuwah. And I'm surnaming myself after the name of Yasharal. Now let's go right back to Jeremiah. Now let's look at chapter 33. In this case, let's look at a few verses here. Behold, the days come, verse 14 of 33. Says Yahuwah, I will perform that good thing which I have promised. What is that? A renewed covenant to the house of Yasharal and to the house of Yehudah, that I was going to cleanse them. I was going to cause them to walk in my ways. In those days, at that time, will I cause the branch, talking about MaShiach, of righteousness, to grow up into David, unto David, and he shall execute what? Judgment and righteousness. Now, I've highlighted righteousness here on purpose, and we'll discuss that in a few minutes. But it says, in those days shall Yehudah be what? Saved or delivered, and Jerusalem shall dwell safely. And this is the name wherewith she shall be called. Yahuwah, our righteousness. Our righteousness. Now, anytime you see the word righteous or righteousness within the text, the focus should be someone that is walking in Torah. Another translation says Yahuwah our Sikkenu, or Sikkenu, because he's our righteousness. It is righteousness in Devarim to do your commands as you have commanded us. To do your commands is our righteousness. Now let's continue in Yirmiyahu. Then may also my covenant be broken with David, my servant, that he should not have a son to reign upon his throne, and with the Levites. It will be broken. It will be broken if Yahuwah does not perform that good thing to the house of Yasharal and the house of Yehudah. As the host of Shamaim cannot be numbered, neither the sand of the sea measured, so will I multiply the seed of David, my servant, and the Levites that minister unto me. Remember, we are a kingdom of priests. Moreover, the word of Yahuwah came to Yirmiyahu, saying, Consider thou not what this people have spoken, saying, The two families which Yahuwah hath chosen, Yehudah and Yasharal, he hath even cast them off. Thus they have despised my people, that they should be no more a nation before them. Verse 25. Thus says Yahuwah, if my covenant be not with Yom and night, and if I have not appointed the ordinances of Shamaim and earth. Now I want you to understand something. The ordinances of Shamaim and earth, there's a command that Yahuwah gave to Shamaim, and there's a command that Yahuwah gave to the earth, or Eretz. That has to be fulfilled. That's why several times within the text you see where Yahuwah would say, I call Shamaim and earth as a witness that I've set before you life and death, barakat and cursing. There's evidence. There's evidence within Shamaim. There's evidence within the earth that he has called you. Now look at verse 26. He said, Then I will cast away the seed of Yaakov. If he does not perform that which he promised, he will cast away the seed of Yaakov. Now, let's go back to Yochanan. And let's continue. Now again, we're talking about the Nicodemus Conversation. Now in Yochanan, beginning at 16, let's go to verse 21. For Elohim so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. For Elohim sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be delivered. He that believeth on him is not condemned, but he that believeth not is condemned already, because he hath not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of Elohim. And this is the condemnation. Now we're getting into, again, the born-again language. Look what he says in verse 19. The condemnation is this, that light is come into the world, and men loved darkness rather than light, because their deeds were evil. Isn't that just like today? We would rather discount the commands of Yahuwah because we would rather take something else in place of the commands, which is light. Look what verse 20 says, For everyone that does or doeth evil hated the light, neither come to the light, lest his deeds should be reproved. Because see, without the Torah, there would be no conviction, there would be no evidence of sin. You wouldn't know sin at all without the Torah. The Torah is the one that taught us about sin. Verse 21. Now here's the action of being born again. But he that does truth comes to the light, that his deeds may be made manifest, that they are wrought in Elohim. Now let's look at a few things here. The first thing, it says that Yahuwah so loved the world. So what is Mashiach saying here? World in this context has the Greek number 2889, which is cosmos, which is the orderly arrangement, the decoration. Now understand something. He created Shamayim, he created earth. They have an assignment. They have an arrangement. There's an orderly path, is cyclical behavior, process, or path that Shamayim goes on, as well as the earth. So when Mashiach has been sent by Yahuwah, has been sent by Elohim, he's sent to bring that arrangement back in order. Now look at this. The world, not only does it talks about being cosmos, or orderly arrangement, it also talks about, or specifically relates to, the ordinances, the inhabitants, and then he says the ordinances has to be obedient to the kingdom of Yah. So he's bringing all of this back together. That's what Mashiach is doing, to get everything, if you will, back in course, or back on course. Now let's look at light for a little bit. In Yirmiyahu, we read that the Torah should be in the inward parts, and he's going to write it up on our hearts. Now, when that happens, that causes us to walk in the kingdom. Not only to walk in the kingdom, but it causes us to do truth. So truth is coming into the light. What is light? Isaiah 8:20 says, to the Torah and to the testimony, if they speak not according to his word, it is because there is no light in them. If they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. I want you to think about that for a moment. Now let's look at Psalms 119:105. Your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. Now at the time that this Psalms is written, the word is considered the Torah. The word is considered the commands of Yahuwah. So he says, your word is a lamp unto my feet, but it is also a light unto my path, unto the direction that I should walk in. Now let's close this with some scripture nuggets. Born again is not a new experience or a teaching that only came about in Yochanan chapter 3, verse 5 and verse 16. To be born again is to be born of the Ruach, the set-apart Ruach of Yahuwah, is to have the Torah written in our hearts, enabling us to do the Torah. Born again, having the Torah written in our hearts to do it, causes us to live in the kingdom. Living in the kingdom will cause us to manifest the light. Now let's look at this next scripture nugget. What is light? It is the manifestation of Torah in our hearts. For without the Torah, one has no light in them. Chapter 3, or rather scripture nugget 3. Whenever you see the phrases washing, cleansing, washing of water, or regeneration, or renewed, in any of the books of Netanyahu to the book of Hazan. That's born again expressions. These are born again expressions which are Torah. That's Torah language. That's not something that is quote unquote new. That's Torah language. These expressions also speaks of a daily lifestyle which displays light, Torah, and the evidence of kingdom living, obedience to the Torah. Shalom, shalom. See you next time on Scripture Nuggets with Restorers of Truth.